Hi, Shalom, Shalom. I want to give all praises and honor and glory to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Raha Wadash. Yahweh is the Most High God, the true God of heaven and earth. And Yahweh Shai is the Messiah, the only begotten Son of the true God. The Raha Wadash is Hebrew for the Holy Spirit. These are the true names of the Most High God and His only begotten Son in the ancient Hebrew tongue, which is the holy language which they have given us in these last days to call upon in spirit and in truth unto salvation and unto redemption. I also want to give double honors to the elder apostles, the elder bishops, and the upcoming elders that rule well and that teach well of Great Millstone. I am not a member of Great Millstone, but I do believe these men to be the true prophets, the sum of the prophets and teachers which the Heavenly Father have set up to feed the people knowledge and understanding. That's my humble opinion. The words which I've heard from these men I thought to be true, and the works which I've saw I thought to be good. I also want to give peace and blessings unto the elect, the house of David, and the 144,000 elect men, whoever you may be, predestined unto salvation and everlasting honor. I also want to give peace and blessings unto the fellow laborers that testify of Yahweh Shai that publish this word. My name is Zachariah, and in the times that we are in, which is a time of prophecy, and coming into a time of prophecy, we are currently in times of prophecy, and we are coming into a time of prophecy, a time of great danger, of peril, of woes and lamentations, a time of temptation, of hardship, a time of the trying of the souls and faith of you believers, where Esau ultimately will bring forth draconian measures, causing imprisonment to those who refuse his agenda pertaining to his digital system, the MOTB, which is a micro CHIP, which is going to be used for as an instrument of programmable money, of currency, for monetary reasons, and also I'm sure as a carrier of digital ID. Ultimately, there's going to be a lot of trouble, and temptations that come behind that system, that agenda of his. Some will be persecuted, ultimately in prison. Some will be literally dismembered. Let's just put it how it is. And this is not to say, but it's not, I'm not saying this for your fear, because ultimately there's hope. And, in this lesson, I wanted to touch on that. This is the book. I'm gonna just jump straight into it. This Proverbs chapter 14, verse 32. The wicked is driven away in his wickedness, but the righteous have hope in his death. And yet the hope that you righteous have, which is in what? In Yahweh Shai, in the death and resurrection of Yahweh Shai. Yahweh Shai himself is the hope that you righteous have. And it's a hope that cannot be prevented by death. That cannot be hindered, impeded by death.
the hope that you elect have will ultimately be fulfilled. It will prosper. It will be done through Yahweh Shai HaMashiach, because he is uh, the way, the truth, and the life. Through him, we shall inherit immortality. We shall obtain immortality. Through him is the resurrection. You think about the common hope of men. Some men hope in riches, some men hope in a good future, where they have a family or whatever. Some men hope in, getting that scholarship. Some men hope in, making that, that protein. Some men hope in getting that job. Some men hope in greatness. But you think about mortality. Men die before their hope is even, fulfilled. But the thing with the righteous, our hope does not rest upon our own strength. It's not determined by our own strength and by our own life, which is mortal. The breath we have in our chest, it's not going to be there forever. Now, to balance it out, you have the elect, which is going to be some of the elect, which is going to live all the way onto the end. But just speaking generally on man, mortal men, on mortality, the breath in our chest is not forever. So you think about the hope, the common hope of men. The hope that man have that is common. It perisheth. It is prevented by death. It's prevented by mortality. It cannot endure the grave, but ours do. Our hope is literally living. Is literally immortal. And that is Yahweh Shai. This is the book of Job, chapter 6, verse 11. What is my strength that I should hope? And what is my end that I should prolong my life? And yeah, just how people say a men die every day. That's true. And what also die? Their hopes, their dreams, the things that they confide in. Their goals. It perished along with them. It says, is my strength the strength of stones, or is my flesh of brass? Is not my help in me, and is wisdom driven quite from me? And the thing is, our hope or our help is not in us. It does not rest upon us. It rests upon Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shai. So we're limited. Mortality, we're mortals. Our strength is little. So death in this case is a problem for man. But when it comes to the hope that is in Yahweh Shai, it is not a problem. In fact, let's go here real quick. Let's go to the book of Romans real quick. Acts, Salakia Acts. This Acts chapter 2, verse 23. It says, him being delivered by the determinate counsel and foreknowledge of God. And everything that Yahweh Shai went through, which this is talking about Yahweh Shai, by the way, everything that Yahweh Shai went through was part of the grand scheme, script of Yahweh. It says, ye have taken and by wicked hands have crucified and slain. Yea, he laid down his life for ungodly people, whom God have raised up, having loosed the pains of death, because it was not possible that he should be holding of it. So ultimately, we have faith, we have hope in his death and resurrection. That we ultimately, one of the things we're hoping is what? To experience what he experienced. If we may, die, the truth of the matter is some of the believers will die. So we hope that we're going to have the resurrection through Yahweh Shai. But when you go into the book of Matthew, chapter 28, verse 18, Yahweh Shai said this. It says, and Yahweh Shai came and spake unto them, saying, all power is given unto me in heaven and in earth. So after Yahweh Shai went through, his crucifixion, his trial, his death, his suffering, his portion of pain, he went to the Father, and ultimately he was elevated on a godhood level above all angels. The scriptures tell you in the book of Colossians chapter 2 that the fullness of Godhead dwelleth in him. So that those divine qualities and essence Yahweh Shai have in fullness. So Yahweh Shai have omnipotent power. And as Yahweh raised Yahweh Shai from the grave, Yahweh Shai is able to do the same for you believers. With that same power. We're literally able to transport your soul in a glorious and immortal, incorruptible body. Literally, man. That's what Yahweh Shai is literally going to do for you, hopeful elect, for you believers. And not only for those who die and are resurrected, but for those who live and remain until his coming. At the end of the day, all the elect will be changed. Their souls will be translated into new bodies, glorious bodies that is incorruptible on a whole nother level. You think about that same power, that Yahweh Shai have, or that Yahweh Shai is coming with. It's the same power that created man in the beginning. That power that is able to manipulate reality itself, the elements, matter, bend space. That's what Yahweh Shai is finna do. Come down from the heavens, which is the spiritual realm. And to come here, that's bending space. Because you think about it, You know, according to man's science, man's knowledge, in order to travel, you know, here to, something close to Earth, it's gonna take a very long time. But Yahweh Shai, he's coming from the heavens, man, the top heaven, the spiritual realm, which is a whole nother dimension, you know. So Yahweh Shai, he's gonna be traveling in those chariots, bending space, man, coming at a speed or in a way that cannot be understood, man. That cannot be understood. So it's the type of power that Yahweh Shai is coming with. So most assuredly, he is able to, transport those spirits into these glorious containers, which is far beyond the containers, the bodies that we, Salaki, that we have now, And it's the type of power that Yahweh Shai is coming with. So again, the hope that we have cannot be prevented by death. It cannot be impeded by death. It's a hope that lives beyond death. That goes around death, that bypass death. Yahweh Shai himself bypassed death, being loose from death, man, from the pains of death. So really, there should be no fear, no worry, no complaints about the portion of pain that you will have to go through, whether that be imprisonment or persecution unto death. If you truly believe. Now, I do say this, when it comes to death, fear the idea of suffering and dying for your wickedness. There's nothing wrong in fearing that. If you die and if you suffer, hope that is for righteousness' sake and not for your wickedness' sake. I do say that, But going to the book of Colossians chapter 3, verse 3, it says, "For you are dead, and your life is hid with Mashiach, Yahweh Shai, and God." So we are ultimately dead to this world. We're dead to sin. Our life, when it says our life is hid with Mashiach, in other words, it's preserved with him. It's kept with him. When someone hide treasure, in other words, they're preserving it. They're keeping it safe. So you believers, the life that you have through Yahweh Shai, which is everlasting life, and it may not seem as so to the bodily eye. In this physical plane, we're still mortals, but there's an immortality, with Yahweh Shai, or preserved through Yahweh Shai, shall I say. And that immortality, that state of immortality, is going to come with Yahweh Shai when you come back. Now, to be more specific with it, those glorious bodies, who he is the one that is able to create those bodies, man. That is able to put all, the different matter and chemicals and elements together, to make it immortal and incorruptible. He's the one that's able to do that. He's the one that's going to do that according to the will of Yahweh. Because on a scientific level, well, we cannot fully comprehend. Let me say this: we cannot fully comprehend what those new bodies are like. The elements of because with science, there's information what elements our bodies made up of, what chemicals and stuff like that. We cannot fully comprehend what type of elements and chemicals that new body is going to be made up of. But best believe Yahweh Shai is coming as the craftsman to make it, and he's the one that is able to do that. So when he come back, he's gonna, give you that immortality, man. He's gonna give you those new bodies. So yeah, our life is hid with Yahweh Shai. We have life awaiting for us. That's resting upon the power of Yahweh Shai. According to God, man. Verse 4, it says, when Mashiach, who is our life, shall appear. So Yahweh Shai, our life is of him. He is our life. Because it is his very power that he have been given from Yahweh that's going to give us life. So technically, he is our life, It says, who is our life shall appear, then shall ye also appear with him in glory. And ultimately Yahweh Shai, through his death and resurrection, formed in hope, for us. He manifested immortality, unto us through the gospel, This is the book of 2 Corinthians, chapter 5, verse 1. For we know that if our earthly house, which is these bodies that we have now, of this tabernacle were dissolved, we have a building of God, an house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. For in this we groan and earnestly desiring to be clothed upon with our house, which is from heaven. If so be that being clothed, we shall not be found naked. So we have a soul, we have a spirit, but we're also going to have a body that's going to clothe that soul, and that's what we're looking at. That's what we're looking forward to. That's our hope. That's what we're waiting forward to. So we may die in this body, but we still have a soul, and we still have and a hope to be clothed upon, with glorious bodies. It says, for we that are in this tabernacle do groan, right? These bodies we have now, we groan. We go through different things on a daily in these bodies, man. It says, being burdened. You think about the thoughts and the thoughts that we have in this body. It's all low. It's all small-minded. We're small-minded, man. We're naturally small-minded. As creatures, we're naturally small-minded. The emotions, the nature that we have, the mortality, all of it. It's all a burden, man. Anxiety and fear, all this is a burden. It's a limitation, it's a weight upon us. This is not for that we will be unclothed. So we ain't really desiring to be unclothed, just being in soul. Just being soul, that's it. We want a body with that soul, It says, but clothed upon, that mortality might be swallowed up of life. So that's what we're looking forward to. We're looking for immortality. We're looking for mortality to be taken away and immortality to come into place. I want to give all praises and honor and glory to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Ruach, Shalom.